in many complex systems, they're so complex that you don't know all the possible ways that things can fail ahead of time. Everybody knows different information. You can't kind of go into a room and sit down and write, these are the 8 problems that might happen. These failures emerge from all these small interactions, as we talked about. So one way that you can learn about what might fail in your systems is by listening to voices of concern, listening to people that are sharing concern about what they see in the system, what's not going well, even mistakes that they have made. And it turns out that one of the key problems, one of the key impediments to learning from systems in this way is the modern boss. Right? So when I think about the modern boss, this is the kind of self-conception of a lot of bosses, right? They're very open. He's friendly, right? Open, friendly, they have an open door policy, they want to hear about your concerns, they want you to come with them to bad news. And this is what research shows, this is how managers, bosses think of themselves. This is how employees think of their bosses, right? But there is actually some good news. There is research that shows that with some pretty small changes, bosses and managers can actually do a much better job of soliciting ideas and soliciting information. So we have 2 groups here. This is an experiment that was run, 4-person groups. They were divided into kind of 2 teams. So you had a bunch of 4-person groups in each team, the blue team and the red team. And what you see here is that they were working on a complex problem. Everybody had kind of a different perspective. Everybody had a different set of facts. But the blue team proposes significantly fewer solutions than the red team. And in this right graph, you see that the red team actually shares almost twice as many facts before a decision is made, so before this group comes to a decision. They've primed each of the leaders in these groups to start the meeting in this very particular way. With the blue group, they start the meeting by saying, the most important thing is that we all agree on our decision. Now here's what I think should be done. In the red teams, the managers start the meeting by saying, the most important thing is that we air all possible viewpoints to reach a good decision. Now, what does each of you think should be done? Right? So it's this very small change that drastically affects the amount of information that comes out and that helps inform these decisions. Now, this is a toy experiment, right? This is something run in a psych lab. And so you might question kind of how applicable this would be to the real world. It turns out, though, that we have a really, really nice, huge empirical data set that really directly ties into this. And that comes from commercial aviation. So over the last 4 decades, commercial aviation has gotten tremendously safer, to the point where I was reading recently, somebody made the point that we've put humans in this tube, it's traveling at 500 miles an hour, and yet statistically it's safer than walking. I mean, that's just kind of crazy and mind-blowing. And it's not because commercial aviation has gotten technologically more sophisticated, or at least it's not exclusively because of that. So there are a number of solutions, there are a number of different things that commercial aviation has done over this time to make the industry and to make this activity much safer. It's called crew resource management. And basically, it's a program to encourage people to share concerns, kind of what we've been talking about. And there's a bunch of different aspects to this, but one really critical one is giving flight crews a script to talk about problems. So giving first officers, giving the junior pilot a way to raise concerns, and giving the captain, giving the senior pilot a way to be trained to listen and hear those concerns. So you start by getting the captain's attention. Hey, Andras, you express a concern. I'm worried we're going to be late to our talk at Rotman. You state the problem as you see it. I see that the traffic is getting really bad, and we may not be able to get an Uber in time. You propose a solution. Let's call for an Uber now and finish our practice at Rotman itself. And then you get explicit agreement. How does that sound?
Sounds great. I'd hate to miss that talk.
There we go. So I think what's really amazing about this is it's so simple, right? But what's really interesting here, I think, is not necessarily that this kind of script directly applies to the business world or the public sector, but that speaking up and listening are themselves actually teachable skills. You know, we often think of them as something that's innate in a person, innate in a hierarchical relationship, or even with a very strong cultural tie. But what this shows us is that it's actually teachable. And that's actually really, that's really tremendous. It kind of suggests that there's really tremendous potential in encouraging people to speak up in a specific way.